This narrative is titled, My Girlfriend Falsely Accused Me and Left with Her Lover. But years later, she came back, and I played along to get my revenge. Before diving into the details of today's video, I need to ask for your help. The channel's growth has slowed down, and subscribing is one of the easiest ways you can support us. It's fast, free, and allows us to keep creating great content for you. Your support means everything to us. Let's keep growing this community together. Thank you so much, and now, let's get into the story. This is a long tale spanning many years, and I'm using fake names for privacy reasons. Also, I'm writing this on mobile, so apologies if the format's off. All right, Reddit. Before I jump into the crazy events that followed, let me give you some context on how all of this began. I promise it's necessary for understanding. My name is Alex, and I grew up in a pretty typical suburban town in Connecticut. It was the type of place with too many Dunkin' Donuts and where everyone knew everyone else's business. My dad had been teaching math at the local high school forever. He was the teacher who made terrible dad jokes that everyone remembered. My mom worked as the librarian at the elementary school. It was a bit awkward with both parents working in the school system, but it worked. We weren't wealthy, but we did all right, living in a small 3-bedroom house with a tiny backyard where Dad tried, unsuccessfully, to grow tomatoes every year. My older sister Emma was the overachiever, straight-A student, debate team captain, the whole deal. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, nerdy middle child who spent way too much time playing World of Warcraft and trying to learn coding to seem cool. This story truly begins when I was about 6 years old, when Sarah, 26, moved into our neighborhood with her family. It was one of those cheesy movie moments that I'll never forget. I still remember the moving truck pulling up to the house 3 doors down. Sarah's mom, Lisa, was an outgoing PTA type who somehow convinced my introverted mom to help them unpack. They ended up chatting for hours about books. I found out later that they were both big Stephen King fans. Sarah was this tiny blonde girl with big glasses that made her look like a baby owl. The first time we actually hung out, our moms forced us to play while they had coffee. It was awkward at first. I was a shy kid who'd rather play Pokemon, and she was outgoing but didn't know anyone yet. Then she saw my Nintendo 64 and completely destroyed me at Mario Kart. I mean, she was perfect. Blue shells, flawless drifts, the whole deal. That was it. We were best friends after that. Our families got super close too. Barbecues, camping trips, which always ended in disaster because neither of our dads could set up a tent, holiday celebrations, you name it. Sarah's dad, Mike, was an intimidating ex-military guy who looked like he could bench press a car, but he was actually a big softy who cried at Disney movies. He worked in construction management and always helped my dad with home projects, which usually involved drinking beers and debating the Yankees versus Red Sox. As kids, Sarah and I were inseparable. We were in most of the same classes, small town, one elementary school, and we had this routine where I helped her with math and she helped me with English. Her family only lived 3 houses down, so we were always at each other's homes. We even had a secret knock, 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 slow ones. Super secret agent stuff. Middle school, however, was when things started getting a bit strange. You know how it goes. Suddenly, everyone's going through puberty, and things get awkward. Some kids started teasing us about being boyfriend and girlfriend, and it made things super uncomfortable. We didn't talk for like 2 weeks in 7th grade because of a silly rumor. But then, Sarah got into a fight with Jessica Martinez, the one who spread the rumor, and that somehow made everything better. Middle school logic, right? The funny thing was, both of our families just assumed we'd end up together. They weren't pushy, but you'd catch these looks from our moms whenever we'd have movie nights in the basement. My mom even has this album full of pictures of us growing up. Everything from missing tooth smiles in elementary school to awkward middle school dance photos. Oh, and that frosted tips phase. What was I thinking? What made our friendship work was that we were different enough to keep things interesting, but similar enough to get along. I was the guy who could spend hours taking apart computers, trying to figure out how they worked. Sarah was more of a people person. She could talk to anyone and somehow get them to like her. But we both loved video games and horror movies, watching The Ring at way too young an age, and had the same weird sense of humor. What I'm trying to say is, this wasn't just a random relationship that went wrong. This was 15 years of friendship, family connections, and shared experiences. Our families even planned vacations together. Sarah's mom was the first person I told when I got into college, and my mom helped Sarah pick out her prom dress. We had a whole support system built around our friendship. It was in high school when things started changing between Sarah and me. A quick disclaimer, this part might sound a bit cliche, but I swear this is exactly how it happened. Sometimes life really does feel like a teen movie, but with more acne and awkwardness. Freshman year started off pretty normal. Sarah had finally convinced her mom to let her get contacts after years of begging. And I had hit a growth spurt over the summer that made me slightly less awkward. We were still best friends, still gaming and doing homework together, still stuffing our faces with my mom's chocolate chip cookies. But this is where it gets interesting. And a bit embarrassing. Our school had a homecoming carnival every fall. Small town stuff with bouncy castles, rigged games, and cotton candy. Sarah and I always went together as friends. But sophomore year, she got asked out by Jake Thompson. Jake was the walking stereotype of a high school jock, football player, perfect hair, drove his dad's BMW. And for some reason, it made me irrationally mad. I spent 2 weeks being a total jerk about it, making passive-aggressive comments about Jake being a typical meathead. He ended up being a really nice guy, though, and now he's a pediatrician, so I was just being a jealous jerk. Sarah finally called me out during one of our study sessions. The conversation went something like this. Sarah, why are you being such a jerk about Jake? Me, I'm not being a jerk. Sarah, you literally just said his brain was probably made of protein powder? Me, well, maybe it is. Sarah, oh my God, are you jealous? Me, turning bright red. What? No, that's ridiculous. But plot twist, I was totally jealous. Took me another year to figure out why. Junior year was when everything changed. We were both taking AP classes, as our parents had convinced us it would look good for college, and Sarah was struggling with calculus. I was pretty good at math, so we started having extra study sessions on weekends. One Saturday, while we were in my basement going over derivatives or limits or whatever math junk we never used again, I noticed her, like really noticed her, how she scrunched her nose when she was confused, how she tapped her pencil against her lips when thinking, and how she smiled when she finally understood something. Then she looked up and caught me staring like a complete idiot. I'd love to say I smoothly confessed my feelings, but no. I panicked, knocked over my Mountain Dew, and somehow headbutted her while trying to clean it up. Classic, right? But then in the middle of apologizing and trying to save our notes from the Mountain Dew disaster, she kissed me. Just grabbed my face and kissed me. I was so shocked I sat there like a statue for a solid few seconds before my brain caught up. When we finally pulled away, the first thing I said was, "But what about Jake?" Real smooth, right? She laughed and told me that Jake had asked her to the carnival to get advice on how to ask out my sister Emma. Apparently, everyone but me had known this. The next few weeks were a bit awkward, but in a good way. We didn't tell anyone at first and tried to act normal around our families, but we were terrible at hiding it. Embarrassingly bad. My mom caught us kissing in the kitchen after school, and Sarah's dad walked in on us holding hands while watching movies, which somehow felt more intimate than the kissing. The reactions were interesting. Our moms literally high-fived each other. My dad tried to give me the talk 3 years too late. And Sarah's dad, Mike, the guy who could probably bench press me, sat me down for a very serious talk. Picture this. I'm a scrawny 16-year-old sitting in their living room while this massive ex-military guy cleans his hunting rifle. I'm 90% sure he did it for dramatic effect. He told me that if I ever hurt his daughter, they'd never find all the pieces, then offered me a beer, which I was too terrified to accept, and asked if I wanted to watch the game. Classic dad behavior. Senior year was basically us being that annoying couple everyone hates. We did everything together. Studied for tests, went to football games. Well, Sarah cheered and I sat freezing in the bleachers. Planned for college and even did the matching Halloween costumes thing. Mario and Luigi. We switched it up, though. And she was Mario because she was still better at the games. The college thing was tough, though. I got into RIT for computer science. Shocking, right? The nerd wanted to do computers. Sarah got into UConn for business marketing, which was 5 hours away. We had this big, dramatic talk about whether we should try long distance or break up. Typical 18-year-old dilemma. So there we were, two teenagers convinced we could make long distance work. I headed off to RIT. Here's the rewritten text based on your request. I was that guy, cargo shorts and all, with my gaming laptop, while Sarah looked like she'd just stepped out of a college brochure when she went to UConn. The first semester went surprisingly well, no complaints. We had a solid routine. Video calls every night at 10 o'clock, unless I was pulling an all-nighter coding, which, let's face it, was often. We texted nonstop and had a shared Netflix account, watching shows together while chatting on the phone. One of us would drive to see the other every other weekend, usually me since Sarah had cheer practice on Saturdays. Pro tip: a 5-hour drive in a beat-up 2008 Honda Civic with a heater that only works on full blast is nowhere near as romantic as the movies make it out to be. Funny story. During my first visit to UConn, I got completely lost trying to find Sarah's dorm. I wandered around campus for 2 hours in the rain after my phone died. Turns out Mr. Whiskers, our cat, had knocked my charger behind the radiator. He was a tiny menace. After finally finding her building, drenched and looking like a drowned rat, I learned Sarah had been waiting for me at the coffee shop the entire time. Classic college experience, right? Those college years were a weird mix of good times and hard lessons. We both joined clubs, me with the coding team, Sarah with the marketing society. We made new friends and tried new things. Sarah got really into yoga and tried to teach me, which led to some hilarious videos of me falling flat on my face attempting downward dog. Those will never see the light of day if I can help it. But here's where I started noticing some red flags, which in hindsight are painfully obvious now. Flag number 1, Sarah started getting odd about me meeting her new college friends. She always had some excuse why I couldn't join their parties when I visited, saying they were only for the marketing crew or whatever. I bought it because, well, I was a trusting idiot. Flag number 2. Her Instagram was suddenly filled with photos from parties and bars, always with the same people I'd never met. There was this guy, Chris. Remember him? He becomes important later. Who kept popping up in the photos. Sarah said he was just the marketing society president. Flag number 3. Our video calls started getting shorter. She was always busy with group projects or early morning meetings, while I was stuck in my dorm at 1 a.m., debugging code and waiting for her to call. But you know what? I kept making excuses. She was networking, building her career. She was just busy. I was so dense. Senior year seemed to improve. We both had job offers lined up in Hartford, me at a promising tech startup with a competitive salary and benefits, and Sarah at a big marketing firm. We found a cute little apartment we could afford if we split the rent. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Graduation was a big family event. Both of our families came, took 1,000,000 pictures, and went to a fancy dinner where our dads got drunk and sang karaoke. Imagine 2 middle-aged guys absolutely butchering Sweet Caroline. We moved in together that summer. The apartment wasn't much. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a strange smell in the hallway no one could explain. But it was ours. We adopted a cat from a local shelter, a derpy orange tabby with 1 eye, and named him Mr. Whiskers. Sarah's choice. I wanted to name him Nick Furry, but got vetoed. I was killing it at my job, working on a project that could lead to a promotion. Sarah seemed to be doing well, too, working late nights at the office, talking about big clients and campaigns. I was so proud of her and started saving for a ring. I had this whole proposal planned out. I was going to take her to the lake, where we had our first real date in high school. I even went ring shopping with Emma, my sister, who flew in just to help because she didn't trust my taste in jewelry. Fair enough. The apartment started to feel like home. We had our routines. Sunday morning pancakes, mine were always weirdly shaped. Movie nights with Mr. Whiskers wedged between us on the couch, silly arguments about whose turn it was to do laundry. We even started talking about buying a house in a few years. We had this 5-year plan mapped out. Funny enough, even now, writing this from my new place, I sometimes miss those days. Not her, definitely not her, but the feeling of having everything figured out. That certainty that your life was on the right track and that the person next to you would never betray you. Now, here's where everything comes crashing down. This is the part that still makes my hands shake as I type it. Pour yourself a drink because this is where it all goes wrong. It was a Tuesday night in March. Remember that big project I was working on? We were doing a major system deployment, like career-making stuff. I'd been coding for about 14 straight hours, surviving on Red Bull and weird off-brand Hot Pockets. At 2 a.m., my phone died. Completely. Couldn't find my charger anywhere. And later realized Mr. Whiskers had knocked it behind the radiator. I needed to message my team lead, Jake, about some critical bug fixes. And since Sarah was asleep, I figured I'd grab her phone to send a Discord message. That's when my whole world fell apart. As soon as I unlocked her phone, yeah, we knew each other's passwords, had since forever, I saw a notification from Chris. Remember Chris from the Marketing Society? The preview just said, "Miss you, baby. Can't wait for..." I know what you're thinking, and yeah, I should have woken her up and asked about it, but something in my gut just knew. You know that feeling when your whole body goes cold and your stomach drops? That's what I felt. I opened the messages. I wish I hadn't. They went back months, hundreds of messages, pictures, plans, hotel receipts. Those late nights at the office, not for work. Those Marketing Society reunions, not reunions. Turns out Chris wasn't just some college friend. He was her department head at work, 15 years older than us, married with kids. They'd been having an affair for almost the entire time we'd been living together. Some choice messages I'll never forget. Can't wait till you finally leave him. And last night was amazing, baby. There were others too, like he's so clueless and still planning that stupid proposal. Yeah, she knew about the ring because my sister couldn't keep her mouth shut. I just sat there on our IKEA couch. Yeah, the one we spent 3 hours building together while laughing at the weird Swedish names for the parts. Scrolling through message after message, each one a knife to my heart. Then, Mr. Whiskers knocked something off the kitchen counter, probably trying to help, and the noise woke Sarah up. She came out of the bedroom, all sleepy and confused, asking why I was still up. I just held up her phone. The look on her face was unforgettable. Not shock, not shame, just annoyance, like I'd inconvenienced her by finding out. What followed was the most surreal conversation of my life. She didn't even try to deny it. She just stood there in her stupid pajamas, the ones with little cats on them that I bought for her at Christmas, and told me how Chris was her soulmate and how she'd been trying to find the right time to tell me. The right time? After 20 plus years of friendship, after 5 years of dating, after we'd built a whole life together, she was waiting for the right time. I lost it. Not violently, I've never been that guy. But I started laughing, hysterically. The kind of laughter where your body doesn't know the difference anymore. I asked her if there had been a right time during all those family dinners, all those vacation plans, all those nights I held her while she was stressed about work. Probably stressed about her boss, but whatever. She started crying, then accused me of being cruel. Cruel. The audacity, right? I told her to leave, just get out. Take whatever she needed for the night and go to her parents, or Chris's, or wherever, but she couldn't stay here. She said, but it's 2 a.m. Like I was being unreasonable. Should have thought about that before, I told her. Not my proudest moment, but hey, I think I was entitled to some pettiness. She packed a bag while I sat there, staring at Mr. Whiskers, who was watching the whole thing like it was prime cat entertainment. The last thing she said before leaving was, "We need to talk about this properly tomorrow." I changed the locks the next morning. But here's the thing, Reddit. This wasn't even the worst part. No, the worst part came next. Do you remember how I said Sarah's dad, Mike, was this intimidating ex-military guy and how her mom, Lisa, was like a second mother to me? Yeah, she had a nuclear option, and she used it. You guys remember how I said Sarah was good at talking to people and getting them on her side? Turns out, I had severely underestimated just how skilled she was at manipulation. The day after I kicked her out, I basically went into hermit mode, called in sick to work. Shout out to Jake, my team lead, who said, "Take all the time you need, no questions." I turned off my phone and spent the day stress cleaning the apartment, while Mr. Whiskers supervised from his cat tower. I found one of her hair ties under the couch and had a minor breakdown. You know, normal breakup stuff. Around 7 p.m., my sister Emma began bombarding my home phone with calls. Yes, I still had a landline because cell reception in our building was terrible. "Welcome to Connecticut." When I finally answered, she asked, "What did you do?" It turns out, while I was frantically sorting our spice rack, Sarah had been incredibly busy. Her version of events, which she shared with both families, our friends, and anyone who would listen, went like this. First, I had been cheating on her with a woman from work. Completely untrue. The only woman I spoke to at work was Linda from HR, who was 60 and always showed up with pictures of her grandchildren at meetings. Second, when she confronted me, I allegedly became violent and threw her out in the middle of the night. The only part of this story that was somewhat true was the timing. Third, I had been emotionally abusive for months, controlling her social life and spying on her phone. The irony, right? Fourth, the grand finale. I had stolen her mom's jewelry collection, worth around $50,000, passed down through generations. That last part was the real kicker, because Lisa, Sarah's mom, had noticed her jewelry was missing about a week before all this started. Sarah convinced her to hold off on reporting it and said she'd check around the house first. Guess who had a key to their house? That would be me. Guess who had been in and out of their house multiple times because they trusted me like family? Again, me. I tried reaching my parents, but they didn't answer. Sarah's parents wouldn't talk to me either blocking me or sending messages calling me awful. The only person who still communicated with me was Emma, and that's because, in her words, she knew how much of a dumbass I am and that I couldn't lie to save my life. Then came the Facebook posts. Sarah's mom wrote this long, emotional post about family betrayal, saying you never really know someone, and tagged my parents in it. The comments were brutal. The next day, my mom called. You know what's worse than your mom being mad at you? Your mom crying and asking, "Why did you do it?" Without even giving me a chance to explain, just assuming I was guilty because Sarah would never lie about something like that. I tried to tell my side, mentioning the messages I had found, but Sarah had already taken care of that. She had told everyone I was making things up because I got caught. And since I was too dumb to take screenshots before she deleted everything, I had no proof. That's when the police showed up at my door. 2 officers, looking serious, said they were investigating a theft and asked where I was on specific dates. The timing perfectly matched when I'd been at Sarah's parents' house, helping her dad with his computer. They had security footage of me entering and leaving their house on those days. I explained I was there because I was dating their daughter and had been a family friend for 2 decades. They took notes, seemed skeptical, and said they'd be in touch. 3 days later, while I was at work trying to fix bugs from a deployment I missed, they returned with a warrant. Ever been arrested in front of your entire office while Linda from HR looks on in horror and your teammate drops his coffee mug? 0 out of 10 would not recommend. I spent 3 nights in county jail. My cellmate Big Mike was actually cool. He shared his bologna sandwich with me and told me his theory that pigeons were government drones. Still, not exactly how I imagined spending my 27th year. I was released because, surprise, they couldn't find any evidence I'd stolen anything. But by then, 1, I missed the critical deployment window at work. 2, the project I'd been leading for months was completely derailed. 3, my face had been plastered all over the local news as a suspected thief. 4, my neighbors started giving me those looks. You know, the ones. 5, Mr. Whiskers was furious because his automatic feeder had run out. Thanks, Emma, for checking on him. When I got back to work, HR called me in. Linda couldn't even look me in the eye, as she explained that due to my unauthorized absence and the negative publicity, they had to let me go. Even Jake, who had been really supportive, stood there, uncomfortable. So there I was, jobless, friendless, with most of my family thinking I was a thief and an abuser. My rent was due in a week, my savings were running out, and would soon go to a lawyer. And the only living thing that still trusted me was a one-eyed cat who'd spent 3 days stress shedding all over my black work pants. But you want to know the real kicker? This wasn't even a rock bottom yet. Not even close, because Sarah still wasn't done with me. After getting fired, I became a hermit. I couldn't afford the apartment anymore, so I had to move back in with my parents. Yeah, those same parents who still weren't sure if I was a thief. The most awkward U-Haul drive of my life, let me tell you. The first few weeks were rough. My dad would hide his wallet when he left for work. Subtle, Dad. Really subtle. My mom would cry randomly while doing the dishes. My old room still had pictures of me and Sarah on the walls, which was just perfect for my mental health. The only constants in my life were, 1, Mr. Whiskers, who my parents initially didn't want in the house, but later fell in love with after he kept bringing them dead mice as gifts. 2, Emma, who took leave from her medical residency to come home, and in her words, stopped me from becoming a full-time Reddit troll. 3, my therapist, Dr. Chen. Shout out to sliding scale payment options. Remember how I said this wasn't rock bottom yet? Well, here it comes. About a month after moving home, I got served with a civil lawsuit. Sarah and her family were suing me for the value of the jewelry, plus emotional damages. Their lawyer sent a thick stack of documents, including character witness statements from our mutual friends about how terrible I was. That night, I had what Dr. Chen later called a complete psychological breakdown. I found myself sitting on the floor of my childhood bathroom at 3 a.m., eating stale Oreos and Googling how to move to Alaska and become a hermit. Mr. Whiskers sat with me the whole time, occasionally stealing Oreos. Bros before, well, you know. Emma found me there the next morning, took one look at the Oreo massacre, and went into full big sister mode. She borrowed money from her savings to get me a decent lawyer. I'm still paying her back, and forced me to shower and put on real pants. She dragged me to the gym, because apparently endorphins are important or whatever. Then she did something that actually changed everything. She made me write a plan, not some vague get my life back stuff, but a real step-by-step guide. We called it Operation Phoenix. Yeah, we're nerds. Shut up. The plan went like this. 1, document everything. Emma made me write down every interaction with Sarah, every false accusation, every job rejection. I started keeping a journal, which sounds lame but actually helped a lot. 2, focus on career rebuilding. I started doing freelance coding work on Upwork. The pay was terrible, but it was something. I took every certification course I could afford and learned cloud architecture because apparently that's where the money is. 3, physical health. It turns out the gym actually helps when you're depressed. Who knew? Well, everyone, I guess. I was just stubborn. 4, build a new support system. I found a local tech meetup group and met some cool people who didn't know about my criminal past. One guy, Marcus, became a good friend and later helped me land my current job. 5, legal defense. My lawyer, Maria, another friend of Emma's, was a pit bull in heels. She helped me file a countersuit for defamation and started gathering evidence. The lawsuit dragged on for months. Sarah's family kept pushing for a settlement, probably thinking I'd crack. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Once you're there, you've got nothing left to lose. Slowly, things began to improve. I got a contract gig with a startup in Hartford. The owner didn't care about my criminal record because his brother had been through something similar. That contract work turned into a full-time offer. I started hanging out more with the tech meetup group. They were all weird in their own ways, which made me feel less alone. Marcus introduced me to rock climbing, which apparently is what software engineers do now instead of having normal hobbies. My parents started coming around too. I caught Dad playing with Mr. Whiskers when he thought no one was watching. Mom stopped hiding her jewelry. I later found out Emma had been showing them the documentation we'd gathered, slowly convincing them that something wasn't adding up with Sarah's story. The real breakthrough came from the most unexpected place. Linda from my old job, remember her? The HR lady with the grandkid photos? She reached out through LinkedIn to tell me she had been noticing some weird expense reports from Sarah's department before all this went down. There were lots of business dinners and client meetings at hotels. Due to HR confidentiality, she couldn't say much, but she provided enough information for us to start connecting the dots. By the 1 year mark of the whole situation, I had a new job that paid better than my old one. An apartment I could afford on my own, with a fancy cat tower for Mr. Whiskers. Real friends who knew the full story and still wanted to hang out. Visible abs. Okay, like 2 abs, but still. And a lawyer who was starting to smile during our meetings, which is always a good sign. Was everything perfect? Heck no. I still had nightmares sometimes, still got awkward stares from old family friends at the grocery store, and still couldn't watch romantic comedies without feeling like throwing something at the TV. But I was surviving. More than surviving, actually. I was rebuilding. Then, because the universe has a twisted sense of humor, that's when Sarah showed up at my door. It was a random Wednesday evening. I had just wrapped up a coding sprint at work and was about to order Thai food. Pad Thai with extra peanuts, fight me. Mr. Whiskers was doing as usual. I'm not hungry, but I see you moving toward food-related items. Dance around my feet when the knock came at the door. Not going to lie, after everything that had happened, I'd gotten paranoid about unexpected visitors and installed one of those Ring doorbells. Best investment ever. I checked the camera, and there she was. Sarah, standing there in her expensive work clothes, looking like she'd been crying. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home. But then I remembered what Emma and Dr. Chen had been telling me about facing your demons or whatever. Plus, Mr. Whiskers had already meowed loudly enough to give away that someone was definitely home. Here's the thing about hitting rock bottom and coming back from it. It changes you. The old Alex would have opened the door ready to either apologize or argue. The new Alex? He hit record on his phone before opening the door. Yeah, I'd learned a few things over the past year. She looked different. Not bad, just defeated. The polished marketing executive was gone. Her eyes were red, and her mascara was slightly smudged. She tried to hug me. The audacity. But I stepped back. Can we talk? She asked. Like we were in some rom-com where the ex shows up for a heartfelt reunion. I let her in because, 1, I was curious what explanation she could possibly have, and 2, Mr. Whiskers was already giving her his best judgmental one-eyed stare from his cat tower. What happened next was honestly surreal. She started crying, like full-on, ugly crying, which I'll admit gave me some satisfaction. Then she confessed everything. The whole time my phone was recording every word. Turns out 1, the affair with Chris had been going on for over a year. 2, she had stolen her mom's jewelry to help pay off Chris's gambling debts. 3, when she realized she couldn't return the jewelry because Chris had already sold it, she panicked. 4, the false accusations against me were her way of covering everything up. 5, Chris had recently dumped her for a 22-year-old intern at their company. The best part, she actually said these exact words. I'm so sorry for falsely accusing you and making you get arrested. I know I destroyed your career and your relationships with our families. I just couldn't admit I was the one who took the jewelry because it would ruin my image. My lawyer later told me that those were the most beautiful words she'd ever heard. Pure poetry. But wait, it gets better. Remember how I mentioned Linda from HR noticed some odd expense reports? Well, turns out Chris had been embezzling from the company, using fake client meetings to cover his gambling habit. Sarah had helped him doctor the paperwork. When Chris dumped her, he also threw her under the bus at work. She was about to be fired and possibly charged with fraud. That's why she came to me. She thought maybe if she came clean, I'd help her out of sympathy. She even asked if we could get back together, saying she'd realized what she lost. I just sat there, letting my phone record every word, while Mr. Whiskers cleaned his butt in the background. He's got excellent dramatic timing. When she finally ran out of steam, I said, "Thanks for telling me all this. I think you should leave now." "That's it?" she asked. "Don't you have anything to say?" "Yeah," I said. "You should probably get a good lawyer." The look on her face when she realized what had just happened? Priceless. I called my lawyer, Maria, immediately after Sarah left. She literally squealed when I played her the recording. Turns out Connecticut is a one-party consent state for recordings, and Sarah had just handed us a golden ticket. What followed was a thing of beauty. 1. The recording was submitted as evidence in both the civil suit and my countersuit. 2. Sarah's family dropped their lawsuit immediately. 3. My countersuit for defamation and damages moved forward full speed. 4. The company Sarah and Chris worked for opened a full investigation into the fraud. 5. Several of our old friends reached out to apologize after the truth came out. The best part? Sarah's mom, Lisa, found out about the jewelry confession when the recording was played during a legal meeting. Watching her realize her daughter had stolen from her and let me take the blame, I almost felt bad. Almost. That was 2 months ago. Since then, Sarah and Chris are both under investigation for fraud. I won my countersuit and am still working out the settlement details. My parents have apologized a million times. Most of our old friend group has reached out to make amends. Mr. Whiskers got a new cat tower. He deserved it. The money from the lawsuit won't undo the past year, but it'll help. I've already paid Emma back. She started a therapy fund and bought a better car. Rip old Honda Civic. More importantly, I got my reputation back. The local news that ran the story about my arrest even did a follow-up piece about false accusations and their impact. I even got some job offers out of it, though I'm staying with my current company. They stood by me through all of this. So here I am, 1 year and 4 months after my life exploded. Single, successful, with a one-eyed cat and a story that's apparently worth 7 Reddit posts. Not where I thought I'd be at 28, but honestly, I'm okay with that. Always trust your gut. Keep receipts for everything. One-party consent recording laws are your friend. Cats are excellent judges of character. Sometimes rock bottom is just the foundation for something better. Since people keep asking, yes, Mr. Whiskers is still living his best life. No, I'm not dating yet. Trust issues, who would have guessed? Yes, I'm still going to therapy. And no, I don't miss Sarah. Some bridges are better left burned. Holy, this blew up. Right, my inbox again. Thanks for all the awards. Donating an equivalent amount to our local animal shelter where I got Mr. Whiskers. You can stop DMing me for Sarah's contact info. She's about to be very busy with legal proceedings anyway.